Folks, this is Book Talk with Corbin. I'm your host. I am really excited about today's guest, Mr. Patrick Wood. He is the founder and executive director of Citizens for Free Speech. And I cannot say enough about the importance of that subject of free speech. I mean, to me, in my opinion, it's like foundational to what's great about America, America's prosperity and America's freedom. And you go back to Frederick Douglass, and he's a person who spoke often about free speech. And so we have with us first-time guest, Mr. Patrick Wood, again, executive director and founder of Citizens for Free Speech. Mr. Wood, thank you so much for spending time with us.
So glad to be with you. Thank you.
Yes. Now, sir, I have it down here that you're the author really of 3 books. One of them is Technology Rising, the Trojan Horse of Global Transformation. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Right. And another one you co-authored, Trilaterals over Washington. And what was the third one you had mentioned to me?
It's Technocracy, the Hard Road to World Order.
Okay. All right. And where can we get some of the books, some of these copies?
Well, they're all available at any place you'd buy a book. Could be a bookstore that can special order it. Could be electronic internet site like Barnes & Noble, Amazon, and so on, Abe's books even. I mean, and they can also get it from my website at Technocracy.news. And I love to send out autograph copies if people do order from us. That's not appropriate for overseas, though. It's so expensive today to ship overseas. It's 2 or 3 times the cost of the book. So.
Well, it's expensive just to mail some within the United States, and given what we pay for a first-class stamp and the service we receive, there's something wrong there. I mean, it's just not right. I think that for the first time in my life, I'm sort of leaning towards that libertarian position of we should take the postal system out of the government's control. Mm-hmm. But you said you had mentioned a website. Give me that website address where people can buy directly from you.
Right. My professional website is Technocracy.news, and it's TECH, tech. Okay. And then Nocracy, as in democracy, I suppose, but Technocracy.news, not .com.
Okay.
And our nonprofit site we'll talk about is citizensforfreespeech.org.
Mr. Wood, let me ask you a silly question. 3 books there, they're all dealing with high-tech stuff. And you're obviously a very fierce freedom of speech advocate. Is there a relationship between those 2 subjects?
Well, there really is. I spent a large part of my professional career in the IT world, studying, dealing with technology, working with it. And I have to say, I love technology. I have great respect for it. When technology and all the gadgets serve me, I think that's great. I like that. It does something for me and it gets my life better. But when technology is used to force me to serve it, I draw the line. I've got no business. I don't think anybody else should have any business on being subservient to the technology that is being used to entrap us now and to manipulate us. And a case in point, of course, is social media, for instance. That's just one. Social media, with its great censorship now of people across the country, and it's issue censorship, not just we're going to get after conservatives or we're going to go get after libertarians or whatever. Anybody that bucks the narrative right now, what's going on, the globalist narrative is canceled from the internet. You're thrown off the social media platforms. Google deplatforms you. This is what originally got me concerned about free speech, because I saw it coming when they started singling out people to completely throw out of the discussion. I said, man, this is trouble.
Let me respond to that a little bit. You had mentioned about Facebook, and I had one guy arguing. He said, look, this has nothing to do with free speech. What you just said has nothing to do with free speech because the government is not doing it. How would you respond to that?
Well, I would respond that that misses the point of the First Amendment. The First Amendment says Congress shall make no law. That's how it starts out. And then it lists the 5 criteria that Congress shall make no law about. It starts out with freedom of expression of religion, free speech, freedom of the press, the right to assemble peaceably, and the right to petition the government for redress of grievances. Now, those are all about communication. Okay, they involve the tongue and written communication, and the founders believed that those were unalienable rights. They wrote very specifically about it. They believed that those rights were given by God, not by man, and therefore could not be taken away by man. That's why they wrote, Congress shall make no law. In other words, keep your hands off of this. This is none of your business. This is the basic foundation stone of America. So any American, anybody that exists in America that seeks to arbitrarily silence someone is not operating within the context of American society and the American way of life, if you will. But free speech is universal. It's not just in America. Other countries don't have it in their constitution like we do. But you'll hear people in Europe and Africa and Asia, they're all talking about freedom of speech. It's a basic human thing that people know that's a right that they have just because they're human. They should be able to speak. So when people say that, well, the government hasn't made a law, has it? Well, yes and no. That they haven't protected those rights like they're supposed to. And when companies like a Facebook or somebody else shows up and they lead people into being, to treat it as a public utility now, where there's billions of people from around the world involved, you can't say that the government has done anything to curtail them in their behavior.
Okay. Right.
Now, if they were a private organization, and there are companies, for instance, that have their own social media, like, big corporations, they make their own thing. And there's certain groups that have social media platforms of their own. We have one at Citizens for Free Speech. It's our platform for local activists. Okay. We can do anything we want to do.
Right.
But we're not holding our platform out as being a public service for anybody who wants to come along and use it for any purpose under the sun, like Twitter and Facebook have done, for instance. Okay. So, people would say, well, you censor too. Look, we're a specialty website, a specialty social media network that serves only local activists. That's the key to get in the first place. And within that, if you come in and you start posting pictures of your kitties and your funny dog videos and stuff, I said, we're gonna tell you this is not appropriate for this social media platform here,
Right. Okay, great. And in your books, you get more into this. Is that correct?
Well, the philosophical base and the historical base of how we got to where we are today is what's really important. And I've studied globalization since the 1970s. That's what really got the first book going, Trilaterals over Washington, studying this elite organization called the Trilateral Commission. And when I discovered historic technocracy a few years ago, I realized there was a connection between that and what happened in the 70s with this Trilateral Commission. Historic technocracy was well documented from an original research point of view, but there wasn't a lot of there was no textbooks that talked about historic technocracy. But there was a clear evidence trail to find out exactly what they were. That was a huge movement in the 1930s. There was over 500,000 card-carrying, dues-paying members of the technocracy movement in North America. That's a big organization for back then.
Yes. Yeah.
So they had specific goals, and they had some very weird thoughts from those days. But technocracy today is the application of science and technology to effect social engineering. And also in society as well as in just humanity, the behavior of humanity.
Wow.
And that's really, that's the background that I come, that brought me to where I am today. Is like, well, these people have been marching in an opposite direction that America was founded on ever since they started.
Right.
And they even declared back then that they were enemies of the government. They wanted to do away with government altogether, just dismiss all of the politicians, and they wanted to appoint technical leaders, engineers and scientists to lead the country. Today we look at people like Dr. Anthony Fauci, for instance, an unelected, unaccountable bureaucrat. He's a technocrat. He answers to no one, but he's changing the very nature of our society at the same time. Very powerful. We see this happening all over the world. These people are now rising up where they're opposed to the government. The governments are losing power, and these organizations or these people like the Faucis of the world, they are gaining power, and the Zuckerbergs and the Eric Schmidts and the Jack Dorseys, right?
You know what really sort of sent a chill up my back what you said, unaccountable and unelected.
Yes.
Unaccountable and unelected.
Yes.
Folks, this is Book Talk with Corbin. I'm your host. We have with us Mr. Patrick Wood. He is the executive director and founder of Citizens for Free Speech. And this is citizensforfreespeech.org. Mr. Wood, why did you start this website? Is this a website, a movement? What is this?
It is a movement at this point. In 2017, I saw the collusion that was beginning in social media platforms. And what I mean by collusion, there would be some guy, maybe a writer, a journalist, an alternative news guy was thrown off of Facebook. He was banned from Facebook. The next day, he gets banned from YouTube.
Yes.
Then he gets banned from Twitter the next day.
Yes.
Then all of a sudden, we find out he's not in the search engine anymore on Google. Well, these are all separate companies. But it would appear, and it appeared very clear to me after I saw this happen many times, that there was collusion going along somewhere being had between these various companies. We don't like this guy and his message, so take him out. And they took him out across the platform. Before that, we dealt with shadow banning, and some people occasionally got banned for stupid stuff. And nobody really thought a whole lot about it. But when the collusion started and people started just all the way across getting knocked out, that just set alarm bells off in my head, Corbin, like crazy. And I said, we're in trouble. We got to do something to stand up against this. And that's why I started in early 2018, Citizens for Free Speech. We set up a nonprofit organization. And our initial goal was simply just to defend and support the First Amendment in general. And as we have matured and come along to where we are today, several years later, we're now very much in the local activism world, teaching people and helping people how to work on a local level to actually change policies in their community. Whether it be education policies, water policies, city council policies, whatever, all that stuff that make a community run. We want to help people get in and get a seat at the table and have their voices heard.
I have it here in my notes, a question to myself to ask you. Citizen Ninja Training, is that what you just basically described?
Yes, we are we're the exclusive home of Citizen Ninja, the Citizen Ninja Way, which is based on a book by our National Director of Training. It's called Citizen Ninja Stand Up to Power. This is not about throwing stars and spears and swords and stuff like that, But the idea of being a citizen ninja is we teach people how to communicate in the civic arena, how to understand and read people, how to listen to people, how to respond to them in a way that isn't necessarily inflammatory, but still gets the point across. and how to analyze what's going on in their city or community, whatever they're looking at that they're concerned about. And so people come to us with various issues that they're concerned about. Like education is a big one right now, but so is the vaccine mandates, and so is people are still concerned about 5G, and they're concerned about some places water, like in Arizona, and whatever their issues are. If you want to have a voice in your community, we want to help you do that. Okay. That's promoting free speech, right? So yes. We don't teach the issues, but we do, we'll take anybody as long as it's legal and, ethical and moral and, not completely left-wing, trying to disrupt all of society. We'll take pretty much anybody comes along and say, hey, we'll help you. We want to give you training. We'll give you some mentoring if necessary, to help you, encourage you in your specific initiative, whatever it is you're doing. Mm-hmm. And then we cut them loose and say, hey, man, go for it. It's up to you now.
Well, is most of this online training or?
At this point, it has been because of COVID, and we just couldn't do anything else. We have done some live physical training before, and we're getting back into it now because things are, even though still not relaxing out in society, a lot of people are just fed up enough with it where they're practicing civil disobedience, in a sense, not really, but, they just say, hey, I'm done with a mask. I'm done with playing the role, and I want to get on with my life. So we're going to be getting back into doing some more on-site training around the country as well.
Fantastic. This is Book Talk with Corbin, folks. I'm speaking to Mr. Patrick Wood. He's the executive director and founder of Citizens for Free Speech. His website is citizensforfreespeech.org. Go there, check it out. Also check out his books, buy his books. They're extremely important that you get them. You can get them at Amazon. And he's already mentioned a personal website where you can get them as well. So we need to wrap up, but before we do, I wanted to touch bases with you about an issue. I think it was in an article they referred to as an activist mother, Sharona Bishop, out in California, and she got a rather surprising visit from the FBI. Could you talk to us about that?
Right. She was actually in Colorado, and she was an activist mom who was concerned about education primarily. I think that's what really got her started. And she has 2 or 3 children, and so she had been active in speaking at several different school boards in Colorado, quite vocal. That's good for her. I say good for her, even if I disagreed with her on some points. Good for her that she's out being vocal and saying what's on her mind. Yeah. But she was also an activist working on voter integrity issues in Colorado, and they apparently have some issues up there. And so the FBI raided her home and searched her home top to bottom. Didn't charge her with anything. They finally left and said, I guess have a nice day. I don't know what you say when you search somebody's house and put them in handcuffs and stuff, but they did leave. And this was a result of the Department of Justice in Washington putting out a kind of an authority blurb to the FBI that these parents around the country that have been protesting things like critical race theory, like the trends in homosexual philosophy teaching in schools and things like voter integrity. If you're doing those things, you very possibly are a domestic terrorist, they said. Yes. And at the very least, you're guilty of hate speech crimes. So the DOJ got this idea that, that means we got to have the FBI, out there watching these people. That politicizes an important agency of the U.S. government and allows for tremendous abuses by the people who run that. And of course, the president really is the boss of the Department of Justice and the FBI in the end. So this is a very dangerous precedent that free speech of this woman is being curtailed by a badge and a gun. It just happens to be the FBI.
Right.
which makes it a little scarier. But there was 2 fathers arrested in Texas this last week that were same deal. They were protesting at a school board, and they had said some things to them that they didn't like, and the school board themselves have their own police force locally to to deal, I suppose, with protecting schools and stuff like that. But they have a badge and they have a gun. They're not allowed to arrest anybody, but they sent their own school guards or their own police people out to collar these 2 fathers, and they did arrest them. They took them to the police, and the police arrested them. But again, it's total suppression of free speech, and this is egregious, absolutely egregious. It was bad enough before, but when you start using the badge and a gun, we really need to stand up and put a stop to this.
I couldn't agree with you more. Here in Kentucky, there have been some people receive threats, and then we've had some
Yes.
things published in the Courier Journal that's just absolutely
Right.
absurd. I mean, just almost flat out said that people who were in opposition to critical race theory were Klansmen. And I know many of these people. I
Yeah.
know many of these people personally. Klansmen. I mean, it's just absurd.
Yeah.
So I'm glad your organization exists to alert us to these issues, and your organization exists as, hey, come to us. We can give you some training and some encouragement, so that you're empowered to to keep America free and prosperous and everything else. Because I don't know how you feel about it, but I don't think any one politician can turn this around. I think your approach is the proper approach. Hey, let's train regular average Americans in how to protect free speech.
Yes. It is up to us in every way. Washington cannot save us right now. They're weaponized against us by and large.
Yes.
Our state governments can't either, because structurally that's not what they do. They're not involved with the cities and the communities and the towns. Only we people are involved at the local level. And we're the only ones that can transform our own communities into something we want to live in for the future.
Yes.
But our director of training very wisely says, if you don't have a seat at the table, you are what's for dinner.
We're going to conclude on that one. I like that. This is Book Talk with Corbin. We're going to conclude this interview with Mr. Patrick Wood. His website is citizensforfreespeech.org. Sir, I hope that we can bring you back sometime.
My pleasure anytime. Thank you, Corbin.